And welcome back. Okay, so now that I've got that image, what I'm going to do is pop into the material editor. Let's pick a new swatch, that one there. Pop into maps actually straight away. Go to the diffuse color and left click on that. And what I'm looking for is standard. Double click on bitmap. And now what I want to do is select the image. There we go. Let's take that. In it goes. And I'm just going to pop back up to the parent section. Go up to the top here. And for this, what I'm going to do is just click the two-sided section. And I also want to give it some self-illumination. So let's whack that up to 100%, and that's okay for the time being. Nothing else needs to be done. Okay, so let's now close that down. So what I'm looking to do is create a 360-degree environment with this image, and the best way to do that is by using a sphere. Okay, let me just zoom out a little bit here. We're going to pop into our create panel. We've got our geometry, standard primitives, and here we have sphere. Okay, let's just create a sphere to begin with. Now I'm going to press F4 so that we can see the structure of the geometry. Now there's a couple of points to this that we should notice, and one of them is the fact that it's not uniform in structure. In fact, if we have a look at this, we've got a pole here where all the segments actually join at that point there, and a pole at the bottom. There we go. And we should also notice that these sections here aren't equal, and that can prove a bit of a problem when it comes to applying maps. So instead of using a standard sphere for this process, what I like to use is a geosphere. Let's just make a little bit of space over here for a moment. And what I'm going to do is take a quick look at the parameters here. Creation method. It's set to diameter. What I'm going to do is set it to the center. Now what that means is that when I start to create it, left click with the mouse key and drag out, it's creating it from the center. Okay, so I've got the radius here, not bothered what it is at the moment, and segments at 6. Now for the moment what I'm going to do is just bring those segments down to 1, and then we can look at some of these other options that we have here and explain this. Now the geosphere actually has a few distinct advantages over and above that of the standard sphere. The first is that the faces are more regular. The second is that when it comes to rendering, it actually renders it out far more smoothly. And I think the third one is that it doesn't really have any poles, although we've got it down here at one segment, down at its base level. It does appear to have a pole, but if you have a look, it doesn't, because we can go to any section and we can see here that they are all uniform, unlike the standard sphere. Now what a lot of people find confusing when they first start working with geospheres is this section down here, the geodesic base type groups. We've got 3 types. We've got tetra, octa and icosa. Let's start off with tetra first of all. Now straight away we can see that it's actually changed its shape to that of a 3-sided pyramid. Now the tetra is actually based on a 4-sided tetrahedron, and the triangular facets can actually vary the shape and size, and that means that the sphere can actually be divided into 4 equal segments. In other words, here we've got one face. If we have a look around, 2, 3 and 1 at the bottom, 4. Well, we had a bit of a screen freeze there, but not to worry, we've got it back. Okay, so what does this actually mean? Well, if we look at the segments section here, we've got it down at its base level to that of one tetrahedron. Now, if we increase the segments, let's take it up to 2. Alright, it's performed a little calculation and it's increased the number of faces, but it's based on the fact that the original section was a tetrahedron. Now, this means that we can actually divide this sphere into 4 equal segments. It's a little bit more complex than that, but this is the easiest way to explain it. So, if we increase that to 3 segments, let's just have a quick look around, we can see it's beginning to change the shape of the geosphere. Now, let's increase that. Say to about 11. So here we will always be able to subdivide this into 4 equal sections. So if we now have a look at the octahedron and bring that down to 1 level, 1 segment, here we can see that we have a basic diamond with 8 faces, and that's our base level. So when we start to increase its number of sections, we will always be able to divide this into 8 equal segments. Now, with the icosahedron here, let's bring this down to its base level. What we have is 20 sides, and that means that this geosphere will always be able to be divided into any number of equal segments based on multiples and divisions of 20 faces. But there's also another important thing about the icosahedron, and it's this. With the tetrahedron and the octahedron, whilst their faces may be regular, the sizes may differ. But that's not the case with the icosahedron. The faces are all regular in shape and are all of the same size, and that nicely fits the bill for our requirements. So what I'm going to do here is increase the segments to something round about 10. That looks fine there. Now, as far as the segments is concerned, you can actually input a value up to 200 segments, but that should produce round about 800,000 faces, and that's going to take up a hell of a lot of memory. So 10's fine. Incidentally, I use geospheres when creating planets and planetary atmospheres. Fits the bill. Okay, so we want it smooth. Hemisphere, well, if we were to select that, it just halves it along the hemisphere there, gives us a hemisphere. We don't want that. Base pivot. Now, at the moment, our pivot section is in the center of our geosphere. If I select that for the base pivot, what it does is it places the pivot down at the base here. We don't want that, so we can turn that back off. Generating mapping coordinates. Well, basically that just generates the coordinates if we want to apply a mapped material to this geosphere. Now, as you can see, the default is on. Real world map size, well, that actually controls the scaling methods used for texture map materials that are applied to the object. So basically the scaling values are controlled by the real world scale settings. No, we don't want that one. Okay, so we're going to leave that at that. Everything looks fine, and what I want to do is apply our material to this geosphere. So let's open this up, grab our material, and let's apply it. pop up here, show materials in viewport. I've got everything set to standard display with maps at the moment, so let's do that, and there we can see our material on the geosphere. Let's close this down. I don't want that, so let's select it and press delete. Now if we pop around, where's our aeroplane? Well, there's our Messerschmitt there. Now what we're going to do is select the geosphere, and as far as the radius is concerned, I want this big. Right, that's the outside. Now we're on the inside, and I'm going to make that really big. Okay, well, I may need to adjust the size of this yet again, but what I want to do at the moment is a quick render. Well, there we go, and you got to admit, that's impressive. Okay, let's close it down. Let me select CC Messerschmitt. What I want to do is a quick zoom around. Now then, as we can see, we do have this 360 degree view. Quite impressive. There's the aeroplane, and navigating around can be a little bit difficult to begin with. Let's try another render. That's looking good. Well, let's now close this back down, and I want to select the geosphere again. Right click. First of all, I want to convert it to an editable poly. Now I'm going to right click again, pop down to object properties. First of all, I'm going to uncheck show frozen in grey. Next, I need to come across to the rendering controls. Visibility we want as 1. I want it renderable. Inherit visibility, yes. Visible to the camera, yes. Visible to reflection and refraction, no. We're unchecking that one. Receive shadows, no. Cast shadows, no. Apply atmospherics, no. As far as the motion blur is concerned, we can leave it as it is there, and then we can say OK. Now what I want to do is just pop into the layers manager, scene set, geosphere 1, and I want that frozen, and that should stop us from inadvertently selecting our geosphere. Okay, well, we'll call that it for this session, and I'll catch you later.